realize that the unwritten and unlimited is written once we write it with our pen. So this whole concept of this unwritten constitutional principle, the war of principalities was always between who would get to be the principal member of the story, the principal storyteller, who would get to be that one. That's the principle in the first person pronoun of I, me, my, myself, us, we, ours, ourself. Those pronouns reflect the office of man, which is the first person. Second person is agent, who can speak for the one who is moved from principle to ward, because now you are not able to ward off threats yourself, for you have let someone get in the middle of you and your power. So I hope this serves you tremendously. I look forward to hearing about it in the comments, or you can private message me and let me know what it means to you, for you, what you're going to do with it. If you are local and want to come to the Call to Remember on November 10th and 11th, they're two separate events, but there's an overnight option that is going to be beautiful because of the level of community that we're building in an organic grassroots initiative that is moving inward instead of looking outward, though having the support of the outside around us as we go inward together. So, as you can see, this is the Supreme Court of Canada, the unwritten constitutional principles. What is going on? Okay, so I just want to point out principles actually ties in with being the principal to the agent and the agent to the principal. So it's not going to talk about this, but before we get into a biased report where we are being ported again into a biased ship, where the vassal of the Vatican ultimately, or the Holy See, are the seas that we are sailing in unawares. Okay, so this is remarks of the Right Honorable Beverly McLaughlin, PC Chief Justice of Canada. So I want you to just recognize that she is being titled the Right Honorable, and then her name followed by credentials that give authority, or the sound of authority, because she's got the title. So that all is very similar to Justice John Rooke, who was a crook to the people by creating the OPCA litigant status under the 2012 judgment in the Meads versus Meads case law precedent that deemed anyone using a freeman of the land, common law, or any way inconvenient argument against the courts and the men and women acting on its behalf could then be deemed vexatious litigants, which means causing frustration or annoyance or irritation to those who are busy people that have lots of tasks to do and don't need to go through a lot of paperwork that is just gobbledygook, which is what they often refer to the common law or natural English as, because Dog Latin is different and legalese is different from English too. So I want to point out the word palladium, actually, because I pulled that up earlier, because it's used figuratively to mean anything believed to provide protection or safety. So it's actually kind of known as a safeguard. So I learned of this word when I tried to pursue Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, which was said to be the People's Protection Clause, or the Palladium of article, or of the 1215 Magna Carta. However, in my research, what I've discovered, and I had heard a piece of when I got involved with the Practical Lawful Dissent International group that Jackie Robinson, aka Jackie Phoenix, was spearheading at the time and still is now. But after doing 12 interviews or organized lawful summits on Zoom to try to figure out this lawful process. Wow, that light is really bright. I thought I had like a spotlight coming down right next to me. I thought my cell phone light was on or something. Yeah, I found out about that word though, because I got involved with that movement. I hosted all these calls to get to the bottom of it. And then basically it was way too much drama and there were way too many holes. And that was when I got my charge, or it was 2 months before I got the charge for speaking at the rally. But basically things weren't lining up. And then when I started learning from my friend I call my lawman, basically he shared with me that there's a mixing of jurisdiction within the notices that David had created before his death in November 2020, before I found out about it in December 2020. So basically there's mixing of jurisdictions, and then anyone that is using the paperwork, which is 5 notices to the cops, courts, and councils, which is like 15 notices, which is a lot of money in postage that you're supposed to send registered mail, in order to then become deemed a vexatious litigant potentially, which is what the OPCA litigant status is, which is then when under the Mental Health Act essentially, but under the legal version of it, which is the organized. So you've got a guru, you're following templates, you didn't do this on your own, you're part of a group, so you're no longer an individual because now you're part of the group. Pseudo-legal is kind of legal, but more so English, which is a mixing of jurisdiction because the legal system uses legalese and English is not legalese. So there's a mixing of jurisdictions there. And yeah, so basically I got involved with this movement, and then I found out about the OPCA litigant being the commercial is the Maritime Admiralty law, where we're then brought into the jurisdiction of the Holy See that we don't see because it's a shell or dummy corpse. And then you got the argument to say that you're going to fight, which is how the corpse is able to say, well, they started it. They showed that they're going to defend their position against the imposition that we're trying to make on their position. So the impositions on I'm in position are where the corporation tries to knock us off our standing by saying, do you understand, by making us then stand under them instead of stand on our own and remain in position compared to having an imposition placed on us. So that title is a danger to anyone that's subscribing to the Practical Lawful Dissent International group. So anyone that knows anyone that is, I would really appreciate if you could send this to them so that they're aware that if they were to have that status applied to them, they could challenge it, as I did when they tried it on me, and say, I do not consent to the application of any statuses, titles, or personages without consenting in writing to it ahead of being called it. Otherwise, I believe it is fraud to call me otherwise. So I claim that right. And once I've claimed that right, I have access to that right. But if I think that I'm just going to claim from what is unwritten and then say, oh, but I had that right. Who said? You never claimed it. So this was the thing that I learned when I got locked up under the Mental Health Act, is that unless you know your rights, you don't have any. But when I got my summons, and I kind of knew better, and I'd already gotten involved with the Practical Lawful Dissent International group, so I'd actually learned the difference between a letter and a notice. And I started learning about some of the subtle nuances of the tyranny and the treason and the barratry and the racketeering and coercion and bullying and terrorism that is taking place right now at the hands of unidroit, usufruct, de facto corporate governments. Unidroit meaning uni, one, droit, right. One right way when you're under the unidroit, that's going to be the usufruct within the usufruct, that will abuse, use, and profit off of the use of someone else's property if we'll let them. But if we put our foot down and say, no, this is who I am, this is what I claim I have right to, and if you step over the line that I am setting with this fine line that I am writing in my notice, you're liable in your private capacity. No suits, umbrella protection of the corporate umbrella or the corporate body, as you mentioned, have the ability to actually protect one who is not in the public. In our private, we make our own choices. So this Palladium, that's how I learned the word, getting involved in a movement that claimed they had access to the only Palladium that we need to know about. That's how it's described. But anytime someone says that's just the way it is, ask more questions. Because when I learned about this movement in the first place, I actually heard them say something around the 1212 deal, but it didn't matter because the 1215 was when the barons forced King John to sign the 1215 Magna Carta at Runnymede under duress because they were going to kill him if he didn't. And Article 61 basically said if he was being a tyrant, the barons could come together and 25 of them petitioned to have his reign amended because he wasn't behaving properly. And that's basically what Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta is. But the reference to 1212 is very significant because in 1212, King James had fallen out of favor with the Vatican because he wouldn't put a certain man into a certain position within his household, which was England. So King John had the House of England, and then Pope Innocent, I think it was, basically was trying to tell him who he should have in a position within his household. And when he didn't do it, then he got blackballed by the church because of this Pope being offended, essentially. And when that happened, then John was punished. His whole community was punished. There was money taken. There was lots of things that took place. And basically, King John ended up, when the barons were starting to rebel and not like his tyrannical rule of demanding more funds than what the people could afford because he wasn't providing for them and was just demanding more and more and more to protect and look after himself at their expense, and they were getting unruly and upset about this, and he knew it. Then basically he reached out to the Pope and then made the Pope a vassal. What does that mean?
A vassal. Vassal is V-A. So a vassal is just one word different from a vessel.
Yeah. But it is the holder of title is what the vassal is.
Okay.
So when King John made the Pope the vassal of the Kingdom of England, it meant that the Pope had a higher signing authority than what King John did. So the barons not only forced the man who was acting in the position of king to sign a constitutional document that would apply to his kingdom, he did so at a time when he didn't have the final say in the matter. So everyone's claim that the Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta is the Palladium or safety guard for the people, or the People's Protection Act, are deceived because King John didn't have the signing authority to actually approve and sign into an act that which is being claimed as significant.
So a vassal is a slave anyway.
Say more about that.
A vassal is a slave, is a person who held land from a feudal lord and received protection in return for homage and allegiance. Is a bondman, a slave, a subordinate, or dependent. Something has happened there's this okay, you've heard of have you heard of the hidden hand? The hidden hand. There is a hidden hand, because for me, I've reached a point in my consciousness that I'm fed up with being in this place and having to pay for just about, so basically, I don't know if I could say this freely, but this place is so grim, it's so savage that they have you stay in this body, but then you stay in it blindly. You stay in it. Basically, you are a vassal. You're a vassal. You have to, they lord it over you, but you have to learn to not lord it over others. You have to be You have to stay the position of, basically, you don't come into your fullness now. You have to wait till you get to heaven. You know, my mother used to be a teacher, so they tell her that a teacher's reward is in heaven. But all the other people who work, not like my mother, they get to enjoy all the things here, you know, the bare necessities. But my mother's reward is in heaven as a teacher. So my thing is, why do you want to stay a vessel? Why be a vassal rather? Why be a vassal? You know, why do you have to have somebody, you know, who is over you? You know, and I think when Jesus was in the scriptures, it says you're not going to be like those people because they lord it over their people. You won't be like them. You know, you won't be like them. So for me, I feel like this information, if there's a way we can, that once it becomes actionable, we're able to come into that place where we're able to, I guess we're not ready. We're not here to lord it over others, and neither are we ready to continue to be lorded over, you know, like a doormat, you know. So if this information is going to lead there, and then I'm in Nigeria, I've not had a cause to come out, you know. I used to have Nigerian passports, and then I get a visa and I travel. But all the while I had a Nigerian passport for 5 years, that it lasts 5 years, I never stamped them. So for 10 years consecutive, I didn't get to travel. So unless there's a purpose to travel, and then I have to go for that trip, for that thing, then I don't have a passport right now. So um um it's a privilege. It's an honor. I'm when I resonate with your oh boy. I'll call you right back. I'll call you right back. You lost me for a second. I got a call coming in. I may have to leave in just a second. I'll return the call, but it's been an honor, and where we go from here is still yet to be seen. But I had to be here in spite of the inconveniences, and so this is me.
Hey. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And the actionable part of this is to realize that our rights do not come from legislation, that our rights are only referred to or reinforced by the Constitution in terms of what the government and the ones acting in public positions are required to fulfill on behalf of men and women that know how to lawfully self-govern, and also call on the responsible authorities to do their job, which is what a second person agent is supposed to do. So basically, this constitutional document is very similar to the Meads versus Meads case law precedent in 2012, that basically is putting down all of the reasons that this is not going to work, that drawing from the unwritten and unlimited is not actually working. That's what this report, I suspect, is getting to, or this article. On the Supreme Court of Canada, or the Superior Court. Basically, it's going to tell us all the reasons that what can work won't, because who's paying her to write that? Was it of her own accord that she did it, or was somebody telling her what to write because that's the hand that is feeding her and you don't bite it? So we have to recognize that as much as legal documents are going to say one thing, they don't have access to or jurisdiction over anyone that knows how to stand in their private capacity, which removes them from the power of the public. And that means the public's power shrinks. And that is very dangerous to mob bosses that take out the competition in order to protect their turf. Well, we're in a new kind of turf war because our souls are what's on the line. And maid service, like we talked about earlier, is how, as people get more overloaded with inorganic substances in their organic forms, the pain of not being able to move. I have a picture of my muscles on Facebook as my profile picture that I just changed to yesterday. And somebody was just like, oh my God, you must work out so much in order to look like that. And it's just like, no, I actually don't. But I do handstands when they're fun, and I bubble up, and I energetically, vibrationally, I melt a lot on me. As long as I'm moving fast enough within my body to be more light and crystalline than carbon, which isn't to say carbon is bad, but it is to say that we are transitioning from carbon-based DNA into crystalline-based DNA. We're getting upgraded, and the next generation were already born luminescent. So like, these are the things that we need to kind of be having more conversations about, but not in this moment. So I'm going to say thank you for showing up tonight. And I'm going to post this to the Peaceful Inner Warriors United channel. So if you want to share that with some of the people that you're connected to, the actionable part of this is that you need to be connected to community members that will keep you safe, that will know where you are, that you're not going out to try something and then a gang of bullies are going to pick you off on the side of the road because you're just one. When you walk with your fellow man and woman without the statuses and titles and personages that make us think some are better and some are worse, when we get down to being he even, that's when heaven comes to earth.
Okay. You have a good one, and speak soon.
You too. Thank you so much. Peace out.